Good morning. I'm Daniel Brooks, Associate Commissioner of the South Carolina High School League. On behalf of our Commissioner, Mr. Jerome Singleton, our wonderful staff here at the League, we welcome you to a very exciting day, our first Health and Wellness Summit. While we would have loved to have been in person, we decided to bring this information to you virtually. As you know, it's a wonderful way to stay connected, especially in the middle of a pandemic. I can't think of a more important time than now to stress and to teach the importance of health and wellness. Health and wellness is at the core of educational athletics. Our students are at the heart of what we do here at the League. You are our future, and your health is key to your future. Team South Carolina, our Prisma Health partners, state athletic associations from all around the country, NFHS Network, we welcome you to the South Carolina High School League 2021 Health and Wellness Summit. And speaking with your coaches, athletic directors, and administrators, I know that many of you are watching this presentation in the auditoriums, gymnasiums, media centers, multi-purpose rooms, classrooms, and some of you are even at home because you're on quarantine, but you didn't want to miss what we have to offer today. I have a few things that I ask. I ask that you take good notes, ask great questions by utilizing the chat, learn all that you can learn, enjoy our summit, and now I ask that you turn your full attention to the screen for your 2021 Health and Wellness Summit.
Hello, I'm Mark O'Halla, President and CEO of Prisma Health. I'm delighted to be a part of the first ever Health and Wellness Student Summit organized by the South Carolina High School League. This summit is asking for your undivided attention for 2 hours, just 120 minutes that will positively impact your life. You all have been adjusting to a life-changing event. COVID-19 has hit all of us hard, but people your age may have been affected the most in terms of activities and daily life. By not being able to physically attend school, hang out with your friends, or play sports, which is pretty tough for student athletes. As you navigate through these challenging times, you're not alone. Prisma Health has a team more than 28,000 strong across the Midlands and the Upstate to help you and your team stay healthy. From fitness and nutrition to sleep and mental health, we're here around the clock to support your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. We even offer COVID-19 vaccines at many of our primary care practices. Speaking of practice, some of you may be familiar with our athletic trainers. Prisma Health supplies 80 certified athletic trainers at 135 schools across our state. To make sure student athletes play safely, and if injury does occur, expertise is on hand for immediate treatment and rehabilitation afterward. Our highly trained orthopedic doctors are nationally renowned and have years of dedicated experience working with athletes on the professional, collegiate, and high school level. We're the official team doctors for both the Gamecocks and the Tigers. So should you suffer an injury, our orthopedic surgeons have what it takes to help you safely return to playing condition. So how will we change your life in 2 hours today? We're going to expand your playbook by sharing ways to maintain good health and conditioning, both now and far into the future. Know that at Prisma Health, our care professionals are always on your team to help you with learning the keys for good health. And good health is always a winner. Prisma Health welcomes you to the Health and Wellness Summit. Just 120 minutes, and the clock starts now.
Good morning, South Carolina. And yes, welcome to our very first Health and Wellness Summit. As Mark O'Halla said, this is 2 hours that will indeed change your life. Our first presenter earned her undergraduate degree in exercise science with a minor in health promotion, education, and behavior at the University of South Carolina. She earned her master's in food, nutrition, and culinary science at Clemson University. She went on to complete her dietetic internship with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. She is a registered and licensed dietitian in the state of South Carolina and also a board certified specialist in obesity and weight management. She's worked as a research associate and registered dietitian at the Center of Integrated Oncology and Survivorship before joining the Prisma Health Business Health Team. Our presenter has been with Prisma Health's business team since 2017 and has loved every minute of it. She is an avid foodie, loves dogs, enjoys running, and sharing her nutrition knowledge with others. Please help us all welcome our first presenter, Ms. Annie Anderson, as she discusses healthy choices and healthy decision-making.
Hi, and thank you so much. Happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen. And as you introduced me, I absolutely, like I said, love dogs, love all things food, and love sharing nutrition knowledge. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with you all today. So today's topic is healthy choices, healthy decisions, and we're going to talk about simple steps to building a healthy habit for a healthy lifestyle. So the objectives, we're going to talk about sort of the background and essential nutrients that are needed to be overall healthy. We're going to talk about how to portion this and plate this on the plate using the healthy plate model. And then we're going to talk about getting started making healthy choices with small shifts. I don't want anybody to do anything drastic. We want to make sure we do this in a sustainable manner. We're going to summarize what we've talked about, and then I'll be able to take some questions at the end. So when you hear the word essential, I always ask my class, well, what does that mean to you? And when you hear that, a lot of people will throw out, well, we have to have that. We need to get that through our calories. And that's exactly what it is. We want to make sure that we have our energy yielding nutrients. So our 3 macros, our carbohydrates, protein, and fat, that's what makes up our total calories. And then we also have our non-energy yielding nutrients that are just as important, but they do not provide any caloric value. And that's going to be found with our vitamins, minerals, and water. And we're going to jump off and talk about those 3 first. So with our vitamins, we have a number of ones that we can get through eating a balanced diet. You can see I have highlighted here, we have water soluble, and we also have soluble vitamins. And so our water soluble vitamins are ones that we're going to need on a daily basis. We're going to be excreting those out daily. And so those would be our typical B vitamins, vitamin C, like you'd see in your oranges. With our fat soluble vitamins, these actually require a little bit of fat in order to be dissolved and used and absorbed by the body. And so the one I always throw out is vitamin A in our carrot. Going to take a little bit of guacamole, or maybe it's a little bit of a ranch dressing, and that fat from that dressing or that avocado or guacamole helps you to absorb that fat soluble vitamin. You can see too that I just had 2 labels pop up. We have our USP and Consumer Labs. So these are third-party companies. And so this is mainly talking about supplements. And you want to be cautious with that because the FDA does not regulate supplements unless proven harmful. And so that's why it's always important to talk with your doctor, check with your coaches as well, because you don't want anything to interfere with NCAA guidelines, especially if you're an athlete participating in a sport. And so these third-party companies actually help to verify a supplement to make sure it is in fact what it is. And so I always recommend that. In general, eating a balanced diet, most of us do not need supplements, but there's always those one-offs, and definitely talking with your physician and consulting with your team sport, either coach or team physician to help with that. We also have minerals. So these are important for a number of different purposes, either building bones, helping with our hormones, regulating our heartbeat. We have our major and our trace minerals. And so you can see major minerals, we just need those in a little bit larger quantity. Ones that come to mind are going to be sodium, potassium, maybe magnesium. And then we have our trace minerals, like I said, that are just needed in smaller quantities. And so that's typically our iron, copper, and manganese or iodine. These are ones, again, if we eat a balanced diet, we're absolutely going to be getting all of these different nutrients from our foods. One I wanted to highlight was sodium. We typically in the US get a lot of sodium, and I always like to throw out, where do we typically get most of our sodium intake? And the answer is about 75% of it comes from either pre-processed foods or going out to eat. And so that's why really just kind of watching how much we're going out to eat or how much we're getting something that's prepackaged. You can see the examples here from that ramen soup or from our Olive Garden chicken fettuccine. You can see that we're at 790 milligrams of sodium. And then that Olive Garden dinner, we're at about almost 1,500 milligrams of sodium. And typically in the US diet, we see people get about 3,400 to 3,600 milligrams of sodium in a day. And most of us need about 2,300 milligrams. And if we have high blood pressure, that number gets a little bit lower, about 1,500 milligrams. So where's the salt hiding? A lot of times, again, it's in those prepackaged foods going out to eat, but our breads, our deli meats, dressings, sauces, some of our frozen foods or pickled foods tend to be those highest ones that we see that sodium content coming from. Next, one of our other essential nutrients that's non-energy yielding is water. We need to get enough water daily. You can see that we're up to 70% composed of water. This is what helps carry nutrients and oxygen to our cells, helps to get waste out of the body. It also helps prevent constipation. One reason I always throw that out there is that I think that we need to make sure we're getting enough fiber in our diet, and we need to make sure we get enough water for getting more fiber, because that actually will help make sure that we don't get more constipated. And it also helps with satiety. You can see for our baseline recommendations, about boys 14 to 18 years, we're looking at about 6 to 7 water bottles in a day. Girls 14 to 18, about 10 cups or 5 water bottles in a day. And it adds up. So definitely trying to get it throughout the day. If you can have a water bottle with you while you're at school, carrying it around, definitely when you're participating in sports, make sure you have some water on the sidelines to rehydrate once you're done working out and during working out. Now you can see that we have our 3 energy yielding nutrients. So this is going to be our carbs, protein, and fat. And we really want to try to get all of our different macronutrients from all of our different food groups. And we're going to explain what that looks like in the next few slides. So our first macronutrient is carbohydrate. You can see that it yields 4 calories per 1 gram. And typically when we look on the label, we can see that carbohydrates are going to encompass our fiber, sugar, alcohols, different types of. Our main food group, so that could be our breads, our pasta, beans. It could be our winter vegetables like our winter squash, our brown rice. All of those are going to be great starches. Our sugary foods, so dessert, juice, regular sugar. Dairy sources, our milk, yogurt, and cottage cheese. I really like to highlight making sure that we're aiming for complex sources, that you're going to have typically more fiber, less sugar in those. And up here, sweet potatoes, beans, brown rice, all of those are going to be excellent complex carbs. Our simple carbs are going to be those that are going to have usually refined grains. They're going to be crackers, typically that are going to be, that you hear the whites, where it's typically going to be processed and it doesn't have as much fiber. Any type of sugar-laden yogurt or ice cream or juice, those are typically going to be what we think about with simple carbohydrates. As you can see here, we want to make sure that we're aiming for natural sources of sugar. So natural sources are going to be our whole fruits, our plain dairy. We really want to watch out for added sugar. And you can see here on the slide, we want to aim for less than 25 grams a day of added sugar. And so that's typically going to be our sodas, our sweets, cakes, cookies, things like that. Doesn't mean we can't ever have these things, but we want to try to limit it, because you can see a 12-ounce can of Coca-Cola is 40 grams of sugar. So that's almost double the amount that we need in a day. So really kind of thinking as your sugar budget, where can we sprinkle those throughout the day to make sure that we're still under that 25 grams or less. You can see protein's our next macronutrient, and this is going to be 4 calories per gram. You can see also we also can get plant-based sources, and I'll highlight those in the next couple slides. So you can see here, typically our based proteins or 1% skim milk or low-fat dairy. This through quinoa, brown rice. A lot of these are going to be excellent sources of plant-based proteins. Our last nutrient is going to be our fat, and it's going to yield 9 calories per 1 gram. And you can see that we typically get that through our oils, our spreads, different condiments. We can also get it through avocado or nuts and seeds. And I always like to highlight that even though it is it gives us 9 calories per gram, doesn't mean that it's bad. We definitely, again, you can remember we need fat to help absorb those fat soluble vitamins. And it's the type of fat that we eat that's really going to be affecting our heart health. I want to highlight here that the 2 categories on the right-hand side are polyunsaturated and are monounsaturated. These are ones that we want to highlight. We're going to get some really great anti-inflammatory effects. We're also going to see positive effects on our cholesterol by getting what we call omega-3 fatty acids. So think salmon, tuna, walnuts, our flaxseed, soybeans, and then also really wanting to highlight, again, our monounsaturated fats from our avocado, our nut butters, olive oil, and a variety of different nuts and seeds. The other 2 categories on the left-hand side, trans fat, we really want to try to eliminate that. That's going to be typically in our high-fat baked goods, some tortillas, anything that's got fully or partially hydrogenated oil. And then with our saturated fat, we just want to limit this, and it doesn't mean you have to completely cut out meat or dairy products, but just instead of having full-fat dairy, you could swap to a 1% or 2%. If we're doing red meat, you can opt for that 90% or greater to have that really lean source of red meat. And then swapping out butter and cooking with olive oil are some really great swaps to help make sure you're getting that heart healthy benefit. I always like to show this macro cheat sheet because this is such a great way, because we sometimes lose sight and think of foods as one category. And I always like to highlight this because you can see beans. They're a complex carb here, but they're also an excellent protein. Same thing with salmon. You can see that it also kind of hits the protein and the fat category. Really great lean protein, but we're getting those excellent heart healthy benefits from it. So just wanted to highlight that so that you could see how some of these foods don't necessarily fit in one macro category. So now we're going to talk about how do we put all those essential nutrients and how do we put this on the plate to enjoy our meals. So when we think about the plate method and the healthy plate method, we're thinking of it as 4 different quarters. So we have our fruits, our grains, our protein, and our vegetables, and then we have dairy off to the side. So the first category with our fruits, we really want to enjoy a variety of different fruits and vegetables for that matter. The more colors, the better. If you do choose to consume juice, always aim for 100% fruit juice and then limit it to about 1 cup per day. Really try to push those whole fruits because, again, you're getting those vitamins and minerals attached to that fiber, and it's going to help keep you full longer. And like I said, try to enjoy it at breakfast meals if you can use it as part of a snack, even on top of salads to get a little bit of sweetness. Really great options with that. What counts as a serving? So we want to have multiple servings of fruits and all of our different food groups throughout the day. So 1 cup of raw cooked fruit is equal to 1 serving. If you do 100% juice, 1 cup, half a cup of dried fruit, 1 medium piece of fruit, or about 8 strawberries, 32 grapes. I always reference about the size of your fist or a tennis ball. That's a great portion if you're thinking about an apple, orange, pear as 1 serving. Same thing with vegetables. The bigger the colors and variety, the better. We really want to aim for those non-starchy veggies because, again, that fiber source is what helps us keep a healthy heart, also helps to keep us full. And what's really nice, too, about the variety of different colors from our fruits and vegetables, when you're exercising, you can produce, different free radicals. And when we think about those different antioxidant properties from our fruits and vegetables, they help to reduce inflammation in the body and help you recover post-exercise. And again, try to use vegetables in meals and at snacks. And we'll talk a little bit about snacks later and what we can do to think of different ideas. What counts as a serving? So 1 cup raw or cooked vegetables. If you want to do a cup of vegetable juice, 2 cups of leafy greens. So because they're so airy, that actually 2 cups equals 1 serving. 1 medium sweet potato or 1 large pepper or tomato can also count as a serving. And I always highlight, eat the colors of the rainbow. We want to aim for half of our plate to be fruits and vegetables. And like we talked about, just really helps to contribute to a balanced diet, getting antioxidants and also increased fiber. And one of my questions I always ask people, what are your favorite fruits and vegetables? Work with ones you like, and then work in 1 new fruit or vegetable at a time to see if you like it. Try it in different cooking techniques. I always try to push roasting vegetables because I think it can give it such a great texture and flavor. So think of different ways with your family and your friends on how you can incorporate more fruits and vegetables in your diet. With grains, So half of our grains, we really want to aim to be whole grain. And when I say whole grain, I have a picture I'll show you in just a second, but we want to have all three parts of that seed. By having all three parts, we get much more protein and fiber, and that's going to help keep us full longer. And it's also going to be really beneficial for heart health, blood sugar management. Some of those products that are going to be whole grain are going to be oatmeal, brown rice, 100% whole grain pasta or breads. Popcorn is actually a whole grain, which is awesome if you want to have that with a snack. We want to limit refined grains. And so this is where they've stripped the fiber away and we're left with a really starchy part of that plant. So always double check that label for whole grain. And so this is kind of what I was talking about with complex and simple again. We want to have that higher fiber, lower sugar. We typically want to see that whole grain in the first few ingredients. When it becomes simple, again, that's where they've stripped away that fiber. It's typically going to be higher in sugar. You might see enriched high fructose corn syrup in the ingredients. And so if we see sugar in those first few ingredients, we may want to put it back and try to find something that's going to give us a little bit more protein and fiber. And this is that visual example. So that's why it's so important to have that whole grain so that we're left with something that's going to keep us full and give us all those essential nutrients that we need. What counts as a serving? So about half a cup of cooked pasta rice. We could do a small pancake. I always reference a CD disc. That's kind of a good reference of about 5 inches. 1 cup cereal. You could do 1 cup starchy vegetables, 1 slice of bread. If we're doing 3 cups popped popcorn. And again, we need multiple different servings of grains throughout the day. So trying to incorporate that at breakfast. If we're trying to do a snack, adding whole grain Triscuits with a great protein would be a wonderful snack to make sure you're getting a balanced snack. And then with protein, we want to choose lean protein foods. And when I throw the word lean out, I always ask people, well, what does that mean? And typically what that means is we just want something that's going to be lower in saturated fat. That's going to help prevent heart disease and also make sure that we're getting a good protein source. We want to try to eat seafood twice a week. And again, trying to highlight the salmon, tuna, those that provide that omega-3 fatty acid. In order to help cut down on some of that saturated fat, we can actually remove the skin. You can trim some of the extra fat off of that. And then always eat a variety of those protein sources. So it could be plant-based. It doesn't always have to be animal source. Getting beans in there. If you want to be adventurous and get some tofu or tempeh, which is a fermented soy, all of those are excellent protein sources. So what counts as a serving? You could do 1 egg, 1 ounce of a deli meat, lean meat from poultry, seafood, chicken, or fish, 1 ounce nut seeds, or 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. Typically at breakfast, we may have 1 or 2 ounces, depending on what we're having. When we get to meals, I always reference a deck of cards or the palm of your hand. That's a really great reference of 3 to 4 ounces, and that's enough that's going to help keep you full. When it comes to dairy, you can drink fat-free, low-fat milk to make sure, again, that we're getting less saturated fat. If you do not tolerate milk products, say you're lactose intolerant, you can do Lactaid, or you can opt for plant-based sources. You could do a soy milk that's fortified. You can also choose yogurt, reduced fat cheeses, and then trying to aim for 2 to 3 servings in a day. And a lot of that's going to help to provide that calcium source. What counts as a serving? So 1 cup of plain milk or 1 cup of a plant-based milk, half a cup of ice cream, 1 slice or 1 ounce of a cheese, 2 tablespoons of cream cheese or sour cream. So I always want to throw this out there as well. Everybody's needs are different. Not everybody's the same. Your energy levels are different. You might be not as active. It just depends on what you do day to day. So that's why, again, the goal is to eat a variety of different types of foods from all of our different food groups to help our body be fueled for learning, activity, and keeping us as healthy as possible. And that's why using that plate method at all of your meals and snacks can really help you get a balance of what you need. So how can I get started? There's tons of different ways to get started. It could be adding a food group. It could be maybe trying not to go out as often, trying 1 new fruit or vegetable per week. And again, this is where I was talking about simple steps to healthy choices. We want to pick something that's sustainable and doable that we can do day to day. Definitely one thing, I always like to add a healthy habit. I think that's much easier than taking something away. And a lot of people tend to skip breakfast in the morning. And so that might be that easy swap is let's try to work in a breakfast and maybe trying to work on making your snacks count. I mentioned earlier, if you're missing a particular food group or you don't feel like you're getting enough food groups in a day, that's a great opportunity at a snack. You want to fill the gaps between your meals with food groups that you need for a balanced diet. And we're going to talk about what a balanced snack looks like. So these could be some small shifts. Maybe instead of a refined chip or cracker or Oreos, we could swap it out for a nutrient-dense snack. So maybe we're adding guacamole or a hummus cup to carrot sticks, or maybe we're adding that to Triscuits. It could also be instead of a Fig Newton or one of the fruit snacks, swapping that out for whole fruit. So you could get an apple, you could get a banana, pear, choose ones you love. And again, that whole fruit is going to give us much more protein and fiber, or excuse me, much more fiber and our vitamins and minerals. Again, maybe instead of having white bread, we could swap to that 100% whole grain wheat bread instead of a bagel or pretzels, maybe again, swapping out for that Triscuit. Instead of a candy bar, it could be swapping out and getting a Greek yogurt. It could also be adding cashews with a little bit of maybe dark chocolate and dried fruit to give you a nice tasty snack. And then again at home, maybe instead of having butter at every meal, save that for special occasions and let's opt for olive oil or avocado oil to get those really great heart healthy benefits. And then a big one is added sugar from soda, sweet tea, and energy drinks. Really trying to limit how often we're having those and trying to get more plain water in there or unsweetened beverages. And there's tons of ways to sweeten it naturally by using either lemons, limes, you could throw mint in there, frozen fruit. If you want to use a no-calorie sweetener like a Crystal Light, that could be a great way to flavor it, but really trying to get more of that water in there on a day-to-day basis. So we mentioned earlier, breakfast might be that difficult one. And so trying to make sure we get something to jumpstart our energy, to help us focus while we're in school. And so to do something quick, what I always suggest, whole wheat toast, peanut butter, and banana. That could be a really great, easy breakfast. Or if you have a little bit of time, maybe doing overnight oats the night before, and then it's ready to go. You can have it hot or cold the next morning. You could throw some berries in there, some almonds, maybe a drizzle of a little bit of honey in there to help flavor it. And then when it comes to a balanced snack, I always like to reference a complete outfit. So a complete snack equals a complete outfit. So you always want to pair a fruit, vegetable, or whole grain with a healthy fat or protein. So apple slices and peanut butter, Triscuit with cheese stick. You could do carrot sticks with hummus. Always think of it as pairing together in order to get the best benefit for that snack. Some other ways to get started, be a healthy role model. So if you're at home and you have younger siblings, or if you want to help out with a family, try to be that example. Make food fun and creative. Getting in the kitchen and helping to prep your snacks makes it more likely that you're going to eat those. Limiting screen time doesn't mean that you can't ever watch the television, but trying to make sure you get some type of activity in the day where you're moving around, whether it's a sport after school or if it's walking with your family. Talking about new ways to integrate new fruits and vegetables or whole grains if that's something you're trying to work on, and recipes that you want to try. So to summarize our daily goals, we want to try to aim for about 5 fruits and vegetables or 5 cups of fruits and vegetables per day. And that easy way to do that is make half your plate fruits and veggies with a variety of different colors. We again want to try to aim for half of our grains to be whole grain. Opt to try to do a lower fat dairy, whether it's soy milk, regular milk, yogurt, cheese. We want to choose lean proteins. So again, that chicken, fish, beans, peas, and that deck of carbs is about that 3 to 4 ounces. We want to limit our added sugar as often as we can. And that's a really great place where plain water can come in. And again, getting those natural sugars from our plain dairy and our fruits. And then trying to get 60 minutes of exercise each day can really help overall create that balanced lifestyle. Questions? Ooh,
Great presentation, Annie, and I'm the first to admit you really have blown my mind. We did have some questions coming in. I have my own questions, but I'm going to just jump around and try to get to these as quickly as possible. I've always been told that a good rule of thumb while grocery shopping is to stay off the aisles, because it seemed like a lot of the items that you mentioned that weren't so good for you were those processed sugars and carbs that you find on the snack aisles and the processed food. So my rule is just to stay on the outskirts where you have your fruits and vegetables, dairy, and that sort of thing. Am I shopping correctly, or what tips do you have for that?
That's such a great question. So when you think about it, shopping on the perimeter, you're going to be more exposed to the produce. You're going to have your dairy, your plain meats, but we also can run into where the bakery is, which again, doesn't necessarily mean we have to avoid it. But we do want to be able to shop in the interior as well, because that's where we'll find some of our whole grains, our healthy oils, some canned goods that are going to be minimally processed. So definitely navigating the insides of the aisles can definitely be helpful.
And also, let's see, one of our questions with water, you mentioned the amount of water, I guess with our teens watching, that they usually do water bottles. If someone has an unhealthy relationship with just plain water, do you have any suggestions of ways to, I guess, add flavor to water, or to trick yourself into liking and drinking more water?
Absolutely. And I think I always tell people to figure out where you're at. If you're only getting 2 cups of water, let's work it up to 3 cups and then 4 cups. And if you really don't like the flavor, trying to find ways to either add mint, lemon, if you want to add like the frozen fruit, or even if it's a flavoring like a Mios or a Crystal Light, to help facilitate getting more of that in. I also tell people, when you wake up in the morning, try to have some water, maybe at each meal or snack. And that also helps to facilitate getting more of those servings in. But definitely, just like I said, start small, figure out where you're at, and 1 more cup is better than no more cups.
Okay, so you're not a fan of the little flavor packets?
No, you can use those. Again, the unsweetened ones, where it's the Crystal Light or the Mios, where it's the artificial sweetener, those might be a little bit better as far as watching out how much added sugar. But definitely, if you're wanting more natural ways to flavor water, I'm a huge fan, like I said, of the lemon, the lime, the mint. I think it definitely, or cucumber water if you want to do that.
Okay. And you mentioned that servings of fish each week, at least 2. And you also mentioned different types of oils. Does it count if you do eat fish, but you fry it in the good oil, or just bake, or, how do you suggest you get around your liking fish, but you like it fried?
Such a good question. So definitely trying not to fry foods will help to decrease the saturated fats, especially depending on the type of oil that you're cooking. But low and slow is great. So if you're baking, if you're able to do crock pot, but typically you don't do that with fish, that might be more like chicken, pork. But definitely if you can bake it, and then finding different ways to flavor it if you're not a huge fan, or if you want to do canned tuna, canned salmon, that's another way, making a tuna salad sandwich and having that with crackers. You could have that as a snack. And I actually just saw one of the questions pop up about coconut oil and why we don't consider that to be a healthy oil. And I can address that too, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead.
So with coconut oil, it is a great high heat oil, but the problem is it's so high in saturated fat. So as a day-to-day oil, it's kind of same thing with butter. Just limit that for special occasions. Really focusing on either olive oil, canola oil, or avocado oil. Those are going to be 3 that I really want people to use day to day.
Okay. And lastly, we hear a lot about the keto diet and, all of these different diet, I don't want to call it fads, because I assume that some of them do have their benefits. Do you have any particular just stronghold advice on, if you are, I like to say lifestyle change, but if someone is saying that they're dieting, is there any particular advice that you have, that if they're determined to diet and limit eating or so forth, is there anything that you could give to those individuals that are watching?
Absolutely. Always talk with your physician to make sure, again, you don't want to follow what I do call a fad diet. You want something that's going to encompass all of your different food groups. And that being said, if you do have a food allergy or intolerance, there's ways to figure out, well, what can we get that's missing from a particular food group if we can't have that. But definitely focusing on what you can have, not what you can't have, and making small steps. I don't want anybody to do anything drastic. So always thinking about what can I do to better my nutrition and my overall needs.
Okay, and one final question. With the health concerns that are occurring now, and throughout history, you've always heard things of, you beat a cold or starve a flu or something like that. With everything that's going on now, is there anything that you could say is a good foundation meal for if you're feeling under the weather? Just something that you think that works.
Absolutely. Staying hydrated is huge. I think definitely making sure you're getting enough fluids, getting good lean proteins, and again, your natural sort of fruits and vegetables to get a variety of different antioxidants. So always trying to get those fruits and veggies in there, whole grains, and then working on reducing inflammation through those heart healthy oils.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm telling you, I have a page full of notes here as you were talking, and I can tell you that there was a big X when you got started, and you mentioned something about the noodles. That is my favorite snack, but when I saw the amount of sodium that I'm taking in, I think I'm going to have to clean out my cupboards. But you gained my respect back with your co-host. I did hear your co-host in the background. So,
oh yes, thank you.
But thank you so much for all of the information and your time and answering the questions. And for our viewers, hang in there with us. The information that Ms. Anderson gave us will be available on our website and also at NFHS Network. But we have another exciting presenter coming up next. And she serves as the medical director and team physician for the University of South Carolina Athletics Department. And during the COVID pandemic, she provides strong leadership as she guides the department's efforts to protect the health of its student athletes and staff. Part of her role, she represents the University of South Carolina on the Southeastern Conference Medical Guidance Task Force, which provides leadership and guidance to the SEC and its member institutions to help them safely and equitably navigate COVID health matters. She joined the Department of Family and Preventative Medicine at the University of South Carolina in 2019 as the program director for the Primary Care Sports Medicine Fellowship. Fellows in this program assist with physician coverage at Gamecock team events. She also serves as team physician for the sports of women's basketball, beach volleyball, cross country, softball, women's tennis, women's track and field, and volleyball. In addition, she treats students, including the student athletes, at the university's Student Health Services. Prior to moving to South Carolina, she served as team physician for the University of Michigan softball and field hockey teams, as well as the men's basketball team at Eastern Michigan University. In addition, she served as a family medicine physician in the Brighton, Michigan area. She completed her undergraduate and medical school education at the University of Michigan and is board certified in family medicine and primary care sports medicine. We welcome Dr. Zoe Foster, and she is going to discuss concussions and correct concussion protocol. So please welcome Dr. Zoe Foster.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So I'm really glad that we are including concussions as part of our topic today. There's certainly a lot of studies and data out there that show that when it comes to concussions, student athletes are really at particular high risk. So I think this is a very important topic for us to be talking about today. Just wanted to start out with a definition of concussion. In the medical field, we would consider concussion a type of traumatic brain injury, or TBI. Concussions can be caused by a hit to the head, but they also can be caused by a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. It's this sudden movement that causes the brain to move around in the skull, that creates chemical changes in the brain. Sometimes it stretches and damages brain cells. So when I think of concussions, I think of them as more of a functional injury, meaning we can't see those changes on something like a CT or an MRI. And that's sometimes what makes concussions a little bit harder to diagnose. In terms of concussion statistics, getting data on exactly how many concussions occur in sport is really very difficult. The information on this slide here is from a 2019 study from the Journal of Pediatrics. And these authors identified about 10,000 concussions that occurred over a 5-year period. If you look at the graph there on the left, football has the highest overall concussion rate, followed closely by girls soccer, and then by boys ice hockey. About 2/3 or 63% of concussions occur during competition, and about 1/3 of them occur during practices. The majority of concussions that we see occur during the regular season, with about 14% of them occurring in the preseason and about 3% of them occurring in the postseason. Most concussions are due to contact with another person at about 63%. About 17% are due to contact with the playing surface, and about 15% are due to contact either with equipment or apparatus that is used in the sport. Part of the challenge in getting data on concussions is that many athletes don't report them. And honestly, I feel reporting a concussion is probably one of the most important things that an athlete can do. It means that we can properly assess them. It means we can monitor their symptoms. It means we can provide them with treatment and make sure that they have adequate time to heal. Yet there's a lot of research out there that suggests that athletes aren't reporting concussions and not taking that critical first step. This data is from a 2014 study where researchers interviewed over 800 high school students. 69% of those student athletes reported that they continued to play despite possible concussion symptoms. And 40% of those athletes said that their coaches weren't aware that they had a possible concussion. In a different study, 50 male and female high school student athletes were asked what they would do if they thought they had a concussion. Most of them answered that they would keep playing and see how they felt, or that they'd take a little break but then return to play. None of the student athletes in that study said that they would stop playing entirely if they experienced concussion symptoms. So those studies are all from several years ago. And thankfully, research over the past 5 years shows that the level of awareness and knowledge about concussion has grown. We know that the majority of student athletes have heard about concussions and understand the dangers of this injury. We know that most parents view concussions as a serious injury and that continuing to play with a concussion can cause further injury or perhaps even death. And we know that many coaches are aware of concussion symptoms and understand that athletes don't have to lose consciousness in order to actually have a concussion. But I would say even though the knowledge and awareness around concussion is growing, research shows that there are still important gaps to be filled. And that's what I'm hoping that we can talk through today. So I wanted to start out with this table talking about concussion symptoms. Typically, after an athlete has sustained a concussion, these signs and symptoms are going to show up pretty soon after the injury. However, initially, it may not be very clear how serious the injury is, as sometimes symptoms can take hours or maybe even a couple of days before they fully show up. When we're evaluating an athlete, during a sporting event, we're checking for signs of concussion right after the injury. We're asking about things like headache, blurry vision, dizziness, maybe balance problems, light or noise sensitivity, trouble concentrating or being more confused than usual, or even feeling sick to their stomach or throwing up. But we don't necessarily even have to talk with an athlete to be watching for symptoms that may suggest a concussion. On the sidelines, the medical staff and the coaches can be watching for slow reaction times. Maybe somebody's not returning to the huddle as quickly as they usually would. Sometimes we'll see student athletes who appear confused about their assignment or their position. Perhaps they leave the huddle and they don't seem to be quite sure where they're supposed to be going before the next play begins. And obviously, we're also watching for loss of consciousness, though that occurs in less than 10% of concussions. Once student athletes are home after an event, we would encourage parents and other family members to watch closely for concussion symptoms, because obviously these can evolve over hours or days, and it's important to closely monitor people in those first few days. There are some alarm symptoms in terms of concussion, and most of them focus on symptoms that are worsening over the course of time. So typically, we're very concerned if somebody has a headache that seems to be getting worse and worse. We're concerned if they seem to be becoming more confused or increasingly restless. We're very concerned if they seem to be disoriented and not sure where they are or what they should be doing. We're worried if they have vomiting that doesn't seem to stop, or they seem more drowsy or harder to wake up than usual. If we're seeing any of those things, either on the sideline or if parents are seeing those things at home, that's a sign that a more serious condition may be developing in their brain and that they need to be taken in right away for emergency evaluation and care. So typically, we as medical providers refer to concussion as a mild brain injury. Certainly, as the slide before showed, there can be people who have more severe, serious symptoms, but most of the time concussions are relatively mild and they're not generally life-threatening. But even so, concussions certainly can be very serious. And so that's why if there is concern that an athlete has a concussion, we would advise that they be removed right away from play for an evaluation. They should be kept out of play the same day of the injury. And I like the mantra, no same day return to play, as an easy way to remember that. South Carolina law requires that student athletes get medical clearance prior to coming back to sport. And so that, I think, should be part of everybody's concussion action plan. However, studies do show that many athletes are returning to sport too soon following a concussion. There was a study of 150 student athletes who were seen in the emergency department for concussion, and many of them didn't take enough time before returning to their usual activities after a concussion. About 39% of them reported returning to play the same day as their concussion, putting themselves at risk for more serious injuries. And more than half of them, about 58%, returned to play without any medical clearance, which means that there's the potential we could miss more serious things going on. And then we don't obviously have the opportunity to help them do things that might help them get better faster. We know that teens who return to play too soon, while their brain is still trying to heal, have greater risk of having a second concussion. And we know that a concussion on top of a concussion, what I would call second impact syndrome, can be incredibly serious. It can cause permanent brain damage or even death in some places. So it's vitally important that we keep our student athletes out of sport the day they've sustained a concussion. Once we've identified a concussion and removed an athlete from play, they can start the concussion recovery process. And recovery from a concussion really is a process. There are things happening inside the brain, both at the neurochemical level and the neurometabolic level, that we can't see that need to happen in order for a brain's systems to normalize and start working again properly. If we ask somebody who has a concussion to place a heavy demand on their brain, either by thinking too much, maybe getting back into physical activity too soon, this will draw resources away from the brain's recovery and make that concussion last longer. So there's really typically no set timeline for a concussion. It's very individual. We can say on average that student athletes take about 2 to 4 weeks to recover from a concussion, but really that's a very individual timeline. So the first couple of days after concussion should really be focused on rest. This means taking it easy. This is limiting physical activity. This is limiting thinking or other things that are going to make symptoms get worse. This is encouraging a good night's sleep and naps during the day if needed, because this is what the brain needs in order to start that recovery process. In fact, there's research out there that shows that students who took 1 to 2 days to recover and then gradually returned to activities had actually fewer reported symptoms over the course of their concussion than students who were instructed to take 5 days of strict rest. So after those first few days of rest, we'd encourage students to start some light activity. That means sort of gradually returning to regular, non-strenuous type activities. People perhaps could return to school. Maybe there's breaks during the school day. Maybe it's just a fewer hours at school. Maybe it's more time to complete work or take tests. We would encourage students in this time period to spend less time with screens, because we know that screens do seem to flare up concussion symptoms. We'd also encourage them to spend a little less time reading and writing, because those things also can flare up concussion symptoms. And again, we're hoping for a good night's sleep, because sleep is that brain's chance to get better. We know that if students have worsening symptoms during any of these phases of recovery, it means that the brain's metabolic activity is being overrun and it's just not coping with that recovery process. If that's the case, we need to step back, allow a little bit more time for rest, lighten up on those activities, and then try again in the next few days. If the light activity phase goes well, then we can move students onto the more moderate activity phase. Here they can return to a regular school schedule, maybe just taking breaks if concussion symptoms seem to worsen. And if that's going well, then they can progress back to regular activity, which would be all of their daily activities, as long as they are not experiencing any symptoms. We know that tolerating regular academic and physical activity without worsening symptoms is a sign of a healthy concussion recovery. So I would always encourage students to push to, not through, their concussion symptoms, because that's what's going to help the recovery be a healthy one. Once a student athlete has been able to safely return to school, that's when we can start talking about return to sport. So in addition to being able to be back to school, the students shouldn't have any concussion symptoms during their normal daily activities, and they should have received clearance from their healthcare provider. And that's the first box here on the right-hand side. Once students have tolerated regular activities, we can start some light sport activity. At this stage, we're really just focusing on getting heart rate up. We really want to minimize head movement and body movement. So this may mean 5 minutes on an exercise bike or a treadmill, just going at a really light, easy pace. An athlete really only should move to the next step in this return to play protocol if they have no new symptoms at the current step, and that they are continuing to feel well. If they're continuing to feel well, then they can move on to the moderate activity. That may include some jogging perhaps, or biking. So we're getting the heart rate up, but we're also incorporating a bit more movement. This is when we can also add back in weightlifting, though this should be at less weight than usual and less time than usual for a given athlete. If that phase goes well, we can move the athlete into heavy activity. That may be sprinting, running, or more sports-specific drills. Again, they can get back more into weightlifting at more of their regular weight and regular time phrase. And then if that goes well, we're moving them into a day of practice and full contact. And if they're still doing well after that, then they can move into a game day situation. There should be at least 24 hours between each step in this progression. And if any symptoms do worsen, we would encourage that athlete to go back to the previous step, get a little rest, and try again. So we know that most children and teens get better from their concussion within a couple of weeks and have sort of moved through this whole return to learn and return to play protocol. But about 30% of student athletes do have concussion symptoms that last about 4 weeks or longer. There are certain factors that might delay somebody's recovery, and that can include things like a previous history of a concussion or a brain injury. People who have neurological or other mental health disorders may take a little bit longer to recover from a concussion. Learning difficulties can sometimes make recovery from a concussion a little more challenging, as can family or social stressors. While it's rare, after only one concussion, what I would call post-concussion syndrome, or people who have concussion symptoms for over 3 months after a concussion, this is most commonly after sustained by people who've had multiple concussions. People who have either post-concussion syndrome or concussion symptoms lasting more than 4 weeks are going to need some extra support. At the school level, this means that the student and the parent can work to determine educational needs and whether or not there's a need for additional supports, modifications, so that the student can continue an academic workload without flaring up their symptoms. On the medical side, I would encourage parents and their athletes to work with their healthcare provider, perhaps to be referred to somebody who's experienced in the management of concussion. There are some great physical therapists in our community who can provide some vestibular rehab, help reorient the eyes and ears and balance systems within the brain so that students can recover more quickly from concussions. Sometimes doing some neuropsychological testing to figure out what parts of thinking and learning are struggling can help us pinpoint how best to help a student get better from a concussion. And let's not forget that concussions certainly can cause depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues, and therapy or counseling can absolutely be helpful in those types of situations. South Carolina does have a concussion law that was passed in 2013. There were requirements in that law for schools, and there were requirements in that law for parents and students. In terms of schools, schools are expected to have guidelines and procedures around concussions that mirror nationally recognized model policies. Schools are required to provide coaches, volunteers, parents, and student athletes with an information sheet every year about concussion that informs them of the nature and risk of concussion and brain injury. And schools are required to remove a student athlete from play if there's any concern for a concussion. In terms of what's expected of parents and families, they're obviously expected to review those information sheets every year that they receive about concussions and sign them along with their student athlete. Parents are also expected to get medical clearance for their student athlete who sustained a concussion prior to allowing them to return to play. I think a strong focus on health and safety in sports can really help keep athletes safe. I feel we need to build a culture in sports where athletes take steps to lower their chances of getting a concussion. I think they need to recognize and report concussion symptoms so that they can take adequate time to rest and recover. But I think this involves going beyond general knowledge of concussion and changing the way all of us talk about how to respond to concussions so that athletes know they can't play with a concussion and that they shouldn't hide their symptoms. While research is ongoing to help identify the best approach to changing the culture of concussion in sports, I'm going to talk through briefly some actions that coaches, parents, and school professionals can take to help keep their athletes safe and supported as they pursue the sports that they love. So for student athletes, I would encourage you to make sure that you know the symptoms of concussion and understand why it's important to take care of your brain. I would encourage you to always report symptoms or possible symptoms of concussion right away to your coach, to a volunteer, or to your athletic trainer who is on your sidelines. I would say, don't forget, missing one game because of a concussion is far less of a burden than missing the whole season because of a concussion that's taken a long time to get better. And I would encourage you to help your teammates. That may be watching somebody who may be having a harder time after a hit and asking somebody to evaluate them for a concussion. That may be supporting somebody who's dealing with a concussion and they're watching the team from the sidelines. In terms of coaches, please educate your athletes about concussion throughout the season and teach them ways to lower their chances of getting a concussion while they're playing sports. Tell your athletes that you always want them to report symptoms of a concussion, no matter how important the game or the event seems. Keep a list of concussion signs and symptoms and your school's concussion action plan with you at your practices and games. That way you have information handy if you need it. Coaches can also help ensure safer play by limiting contact during sports practices, where that's obviously appropriate for the sports. Coaches can limit or ban the use of certain drills or techniques to help reduce the chance of injury in their student athletes. And they can make sure that they're checking sports equipment often, make sure that it's fitting properly, that it's stored well, and it's repaired and replaced in accordance with the manufacturer's guidelines. And last but not least, parents. I think it's really important for us as parents to let our kids know that for us, safety comes first. We'd like for you to talk to your kids about why it's important to report a possible concussion, and that you expect them to report a possible concussion to their coach or other staff right away. We would ask parents to talk with their child's healthcare provider and get written instructions about how their student athlete can best return to the classroom, and then how they can safely return to play. And make sure that you share those instructions with your child's school, so that school can help support you and your athlete as they get back into activities. And lastly, I would encourage all parents and student athletes to make sure that you follow up with your healthcare provider if concussion symptoms don't seem to go away, or if they're taking longer to go away than you think they should. This is the best way we have to help support student athletes through a healthy recovery, and make sure that they're on the right track to getting better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Tons of information. And as you were providing that, we were getting questions. And then before I could write the question down, you were answering it. So I want to tell you two of the most popular questions we had. If you could just drive it home one more time, because you just closed with a lot of this information. But one of the questions is, what can coaches and parents do to support or encourage athletes to speak up, to not feel like it's something to be embarrassed about or ashamed about, or maybe feeling like they're weak or can't take a hit, that kind of mindset? What is something that you think that both parents and coaches can do to let student athletes know they need to report it?
I think from the coach's perspective, positive messaging around concussion really helps. Letting your students know multiple times through the course of the season that you expect, and that it's okay for them to come to you with concerns about a concussion, and that their head, their health, their future is more important to you than this Friday's game or next Friday's game, so that they feel that they have that support, so that they can take that time to get better. I think for parents, modeling that expectation of good sportsmanship, modeling that expectation that students should come to you or a coach or somebody at school with concerns about a concussion, because we know if kids report those concussions, we can assess them, we can evaluate them, and we can get them on the road to feeling better faster than if students aren't reporting that information.
And a lot of the symptoms that you shared, if a parent, a student, if there is an issue at home or after hours, after medical doctor hours, what is something that you think that they could do before, going to an emergency room? Is there a website or a resource that they can go to that you feel that is a solid resource for them to get the information that they need prior to mobilizing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our athletic trainers do a great job in providing parents with concussion information. So make sure if you are leaving that game with your child who has a concussion, make sure you have some information from that athletic trainer and some instructions in terms of what to expect. They're used to providing that information to parents, and so they'll have some good resources for you. If you're looking online, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, has a great concussion awareness program called Heads Up. And there is a ton of information there for parents, for coaches, about concussions, about managing symptoms, about getting students back to learning and getting students back to sport. And so that's always a great resource. If you're really still unsure, I would say most doctors' offices do have somebody who's on call overnight. That may be a nurse, it may be the doctor. But if you're really kind of trying to weigh that, should I go to the ER, should I not, I'm really not sure, that person can help you talk through the symptoms that you're noticing and help you make the right decision for your student.
And you just mentioned that, most doctors' offices and medical professionals are fully aware of concussions, the protocol, all of that. Is there a resource or a directory of, sample directory, I guess, or somewhere that if a coach wanted to recommend someone that is a specialist or deals strictly with concussions, or they feel that has a stronger grasp on that for teenagers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would actually encourage everybody to start with their family doctor or their pediatrician. All of us in those fields have training on managing students with concussions, and I think they're a great place to start. At Prisma Health, we have a number of great concussion experts who we can certainly connect people with. But I'd encourage people to start with your family doctor, with your pediatrician, because they can be a great resource for you as you're trying to figure out what's going on. They know you best, they know your student best, and are really, I think, best able to help you and your family make the right decision.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Foster. You really gave us an ample amount of information and added to, there's some of us that thought we knew, but now we know. So thank you so much. And again, I want to remind our viewers that all of this information will be available on our website as well as nfhsnetwork.com after the presentation. And we have one more presenter coming up, and that is, let's see, she is a family medicine specialist with Prisma Health Baptist Park Ridge Hospital. She graduated with honors from Loyola University of Chicago Strength School of Medicine in 2016. She was inspired to practice medicine by her parents. Her primary goal as a physician is, what can I do to help keep people out of the hospital and living a healthy lifestyle? By being a family medical doctor, she can see patients of all ages and screen and help treat these patients to keep them as healthy as possible. She focuses on maximizing care, effectiveness, and mitigating risk for her patients. And another point that you may find of interest, she was also a D1 basketball player at the University of Alabama. And this morning we welcome Dr. Jacque Jones. Thank you so much for being with us. And she is going to speak about a body in tip-top shape and life after sports. Thank you, Dr.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I'm flattered. I was like, well, let me just listen to this because this person sounds amazing. Thank you so much for those kind words. So I'm happy to be here. As Tammy said, I am a family medicine physician here at Park Ridge Family Medicine. I am Dr. Jacque Jones and also a student athlete. And so I am coming today to give you a little bit of both, a little bit of my brain and my knowledge as a family medicine physician, and then also talk about things that I've learned since college athletics and also in some of the other many hats that I've worn, and we'll get into all of that. I'm just waiting for PowerPoint to start. Am I starting the PowerPoint, or do I need to? I have it on my computer, so if I need to pull it up and share my screen, I can do that.
Dr. Jones, if you would like for us to start it, we can do that.
Either way, I can share my screen and I can start it from here. I know that you all have it, and so I didn't want to mess with the IT guys' plan. So if they want to do it, that's fine. Or I do have it up and I can share it from here as well.
Okay, if you would like to do it, that would be perfect.
Okay, give me 1 second. And I
Okay.
Can you see that? Is everyone
Yes,
seeing?
that's perfect. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get started. Okay. So we are here to talk about life after sports, keeping your body in shape after senior night. So a little bit of a roadmap. We're going to talk about some health screenings that we do here in the office as primary care doctors, some healthy living, college athletics, and career planning or career pretending, just depending on where you are in the process. So the first thing I need students to know is that your health matters. And so whether you are 18 or 80, there are always things that we're concerned about, and we tailor those things in clinics as family medicine doctors, as primary care doctors, to make sure that we're talking about the issues that are important to you or issues that come up often for age and environment. So some of the things that we talk about in my office are substance use. So we want to talk about, are you drinking alcohol? Are you smoking cigarettes? Are you having any access to any other products? And I want to educate, what are those things going to do? What are the risks of using them? What are the disadvantages of using them? And get a better idea on if there's anything happening that helps me educate you on why you've chosen to do so. Now, I will tell you, I ran some numbers, and for tobacco use in the state of South Carolina for adolescents, it is actually decreasing and below the goal. So that is one thing that we're doing a really good job on, but we do want to provide an environment to discuss those things. The next thing is depression. And I have another slide to get into that because I think it's important to understand moods and mood disorders, even in our young people. Insomnia becomes an important one. We'll get back to that. Hypertension, which is also blood pressure. So we check blood pressures, and we find more and more these days, for many reasons, that elevated blood pressures or hypertension diagnoses are happening more than we expect. And so we need to catch those. I say we like to catch things early and often, because the sooner we can get on top of those things, the better off we can be. Obesity is also a big issue in our state and in our nation. The state of South Carolina has an ongoing battle with obesity, and anything we can do to start those conversations early or make people aware that we're on a pathway that may not be ideal, we would like to do that. Infections. So for my teenagers, often this is, some of their first interaction and having to deal with infections. And young people, we think about things like sexually transmitted diseases. So we want to make them aware on how you catch them, how you treat them, how you prevent them, how you avoid them, and vaccines. And so all the rage now is the vaccine for COVID-19, but there's more things to talk about than just COVID in family medicine, in a family medicine practice. And so those are things we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. So mental health is important. What I need parents and teenagers and young adults to know is that depression and anxiety is very common. And we want to provide a space to have conversations about how you're feeling and how we make a plan on tackling those things. But it's also a very sensitive subject, especially for my young people. So I want people to know that before you get in to see me, if you need to have some outlets to find out more information, it's there. So NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is an amazing website. They've got lots of links to different hotlines, to different providers, to different websites, to kind of help people navigate what they're feeling, maybe make an identity on what they think their diagnosis is or is not. And it just kind of helps them shape what their conversation is going to be when they come to see someone like me. Therapy for Black Girls is a great site that I use all the time. Some people are looking for a therapist before they come to see me. They want to do their own research. You can put your zip code in for Therapy for Black Girls, and it will pull up therapists in your area. They also have an amazing podcast to listen to for people who like to have something in their ears to talk through it. There's also the Trevor Youth Project that is geared towards LGBTQ communities to help them navigate the complications and sometimes the depression, anxiety that comes with managing those things. And then also Safe Passage is a website that we use for people who are having concerns or events that involve sexual assault, sexual abuse, or any sexual experience that happened that has been a negative experience. All the many things can, cause depression and anxiety. And even if you haven't had a traumatic event that has happened to you, some people look up and they find that they are feeling that their mood is low. They're feeling a lot of nervousness. And I need for you all to know that you can come see me. Someone like me, you can see your primary care doctor. We talk through those things, we make a plan that everybody can agree on. Vaccines. So there are vaccines that if my seniors are in the building, there's one, meningococcal, you're going to need before you get out the door. So when we are talking to our teenagers, we're getting them ready for college, or we're getting them ready for, junior year, there are a few vaccines that we want to make sure that you are aware of and that you receive. Your meningococcal vaccine is generally required by colleges to have before you arrive on campus. You all stay in dorms, you share spaces. And so something like meningococcal, which is highly infectious, we want to make sure that you've been protected against. HPV, human papillomavirus. Now, this isn't necessarily unique to our teenage population, but I find that the conversation picks up again in our teenage years. So HPV vaccines are really offered as early as 9 years old, and they're designed to protect against this virus, which can cause warts, can cause infections, and more concerning, can increase the risk of cervical cancers in women down the line. We like to have those both done before people mature and develop, or before people become sexually active. And sometimes we get those done younger, but sometimes those conversations happen with families and parents and patients, which in this case would be the kids, around high school time. And so those are ones that we're more than happy to discuss. And of course, COVID-19 is affecting all of our lives. It's affecting how we move about in the spaces that we're in, whether that be on the field or in the classroom or at home or at work. And so having conversations about what we can do, the protections that we can have, always happens. And then there's always the good catch up. For our seniors, we're about to send you out into the world. We're about to send you to college. Do you have all of your vaccines? Sometimes a move has happened. Sometimes you are a military kid and, that appointment was 2 days after your last move and you never got caught up. And so we want to make sure that we walk through your whole profile, to make sure, are you up to date? Is your Tdap, which is your tetanus shot, is that up to date? Are you vaccinated for measles, mumps, rubella? If that is not the case, we want to do that. And now here's something that I learned personally. Once you are leaving high school and you've gotten all your vaccines, keep a copy for yourself. So scan it, ask for a copy, go to your high school, get a copy of that, save it to some electronic file so that later on down the line, when you want to go to medical school or law school or graduate school and they ask you for a copy of all of your vaccine records, you have them available. So health is wealth, right? I say it all the time in my clinic. And so when we're thinking about preparing for life after sports, athletes, think I eat lots of calories, I'm eating to perform, I burn through calories, and that is true and that is great. But when sports are over, health is wealth is still important, and you still are eating for performance, even if that performance is not necessarily on the field. So here is why this is important. 36% of South Carolinians are obese. That's just obesity. That's not our morbid obesity category, and that's not our overweight category. So when you expand out to include those other two, we're getting more into the 60s, almost 70% of South Carolinians having some issue with weight. And so one of the things that I talk about to my adults that I want my youth to know is that you've got to know your foods. I am always surprised how much we do not know about our foods. So I have people come in and they're often frustrated because they've been working very hard in trying to lose weight, trying to maintain their health, and they're not seeing the results. And we do food journals and we talk and they go, well, I have a bowl of cereal in the morning and that's all I do. And I ask, well, okay, do you know the sugar content? Do you know how much fat is in it? Have you read the label? And people say, well, no, but it had a heart on it. on the commercial, they said it was heart healthy. So that's why I'm eating it. Only to discover that maybe it does not have the fiber in it that you really wanted. And maybe it's got a little bit too much sugar in it. And so it's sabotaging your plans. So if we can get young people, especially young athletes who have spent a lot of time invested in performance and eating to perform, if we can keep them focused on that goal and keep them aware that eating to perform is still a thing and understanding foods, it becomes better. So I really want people to read your food labels. There are all kinds of diets out there. So I never recommend a particular diet in my clinic because people are doing keto and vegan and plant-based and intermittent fasting and this amount of protein and all these things. And I think that if you are conscious to your foods and you're following any program, they all will work to some degree. There are some advantages and disadvantages across the board, but overall you will see results. But the one thing that we've got to get young people who turn into adults, young healthy people turn into healthy adults who turn into healthy older adults, and then it continues to go, is you got to read your labels. You got to know what's in it. What are they putting in it? Ideally, I want people to have a low-fat whole food diet. And if you are a meat eater, those meats be lean. I like for people to avoid processed foods and definitely avoid processed sugars. The way to get there, though, is knowing what your foods are. And then, of course, exercise. So as athletes, you're working out every day, hours at a time, you're lifting weights, you're doing cardio, you're doing practice. It just is a no-brainer that you're getting your exercise in. But when athletics comes to an end, the question becomes, well, how much is enough or how much is too much? Well, here's the recommendation. 30 minutes of moderate cardiovascular activity 5 days a week is the goal. Now, I will add on top of that, especially for women who tend to shy away from weight-bearing activities, is that we also want people to be doing weight-bearing activities. Why? Because it keeps muscle tone. Good muscle tone means good protection of the joints. It means less back pain, less hip pain, less knee pain. And if you're like me and you've already got, twisted, swollen ankles from twisting them a couple times on the court or a few bad knees, then you do want as much muscle tone as you can possibly get, because that keeps the joints healthy and it keeps it intact and it prevents injury. We understand injury when we're on the courts or we're on the field or we're in the pool. But injuries happen to people at work, whether you're bending constantly or lifting, whether your job is physically demanding or not. And so keeping that body fit for the performance that it's doing in the moment still becomes very important. Now, this one is very important to me because I find in my high schoolers, sleep hygiene is all over the place. You do not sleep. Y'all are not sleeping at all, because of this picture right here. So phones, tablets, laptops, LED screens, and all the many screens that we have a particular light that comes into the brain, and it tells us it is not 12 o'clock in the morning. It's actually 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're not sleepy. You don't feel tired at all. You can stay up all night, even though you crawled in the bed, you were certain that you were sleepy, and all you said, I'm gonna check Twitter real quick. I just need to see what's on. I'm just going to get on Instagram really fast. I'm not going to stay on long. And next thing you know, 45 minutes has passed and you're still in the very position that these young people on the screen are on, right? And so we know that if we do not have good sleep hygiene, then it's going to decrease performance. Now, that's important to you now as an athlete, and it's important to you now after athletics. Your body does its repair, does its healing, does its memory lane with sleep. And if you're not getting a good quality amount of sleep, then you are decreasing the amount that you can perform. Now, you guys are young, you're healthy, you're absolutely amazing. So you can get it done. But I'm telling you that you could get it done even better with a good sleep hygiene. So generally I tell people, is your room cool? Hotter rooms tend to make sleep less effective. What are you eating or drinking right before bedtime? So we want people to stay away from sugars, which tend to spike and drop you, which are going to potentially make you wake up. How many fluids are you drinking close to bedtime? So if you're somebody that gets up 2 or 3 times at night and you need to use the restroom, that's something to reconsider. And how many layers of clothes are you sleeping in? So are you super hot? Are you too cold? All those things matter. But more importantly, are you putting the phone down? So the phones have gotten great over the years. You can program, I have an iPhone, you can program in your iPhone, I need to be in bed by 10:30. That never happens for me, but let's say it did. I need to be in bed by 10:30. I can tell my phone, you know, or during the week, I'm going to be in bed by 10:30. And then on the weekends, I'm going to be in bed by midnight. My phone will then about 30 minutes before shut down to do not disturb, which, you know, prevents me from feeling the need to pick that phone up and check it and do these things. I can turn it over, lay it flat. The alarms are already set. And then if I need some kind of entertainment, I can use sound, which I can put on the timer. I do not recommend putting TVs on the timer because, again, that LED light is telling your brain that it's still daytime and you do not have to go to sleep. It helps you wind down. Reading a book, something like that will help. Now, some people just do not sleep well. My general rule is if you are not asleep after 15 minutes of laying in bed, you should get out of the bed, go to a different place, maybe read, do some journaling. If it's an anxiety thing, are you worried about something? Make a list. And then I tell people to ball it up and throw it away. You kind of gotten rid of that for the night. That allows yourself to go back. And if you feel tired or if you feel fatigued, you can reestablish yourself back in bed and see if that gives you the comfort that you need. So let's talk college athletics. So, you know, I did I had to look this up. And so in the state of South Carolina, on average, there are about 60,000 male high school athletes and somewhere about 30,000 female high school athletes that are all competing in varsity sports, which I think is amazing. Now, that is a lot and that is great. But here's what you got to know, that the numbers start to shrink when we're talking about college athletics. So after high school, about 7% of high school athletes go on to play varsity sports in college. And when we're talking about Division I athletics, that's less than 2% of high school athletes go on to play Division I sports. Now, there's all the rec leagues and stuff like that. And so there's all these competitive leagues that people participate in. But when we're talking about organized sports, the numbers shrink down a lot. So even as many of you all are skilled and you're fast and you're amazing at what you do, the statistics say that everybody is not going to go on to play college athletics. And so what that means is that right now, you know, being athletes, we need a plan, right? We need a plan. We need a decision tree. We need something. We need to talk it out with our coaches, our counselors, our parents to figure out what is it that I want to do? What are my goals? And if college athletics does not happen, you know, what happens next? Well, I think whether you are going to college or not, some of the things that we talked about for your health screenings and your healthy living stay in place from here on out. College athletes have the benefits of nutritionists and trainers and conditioners that kind of tell them when to run, how fast to run, what to lift, what not to lift. They take care of their injuries. They consult them on their diets. But whether you're an athlete or not, I think understanding that you eat for performance should always be a thing. And if you have that as the top goal, then you just add to the people that are surrounding you to help you do those things. I think college athletics is great. So I have worn many hats and I have seen different aspects of it. So it's not always a physician. My degree is actually in business. I started in corporate America and then I went to work in college athletics in academic advising and life skills planning. And so I have had the ability to see it as an athlete and then be on the other side and talk to athletes about what they think the next steps are and making sure that, you know, we understand that our goals are big, dream big, but make sure we've got a solid plan to it. And so getting to college sports is a big dream and a big goal, and it's attainable for some. Other people are going to go on to do different things. And I think they're going to go on to do amazing things, but we always need to be prepared for the next step. So that brings into the discussion about career planning. Like, what are you going to do? Are you career planning or are you career pretending? Or are you somewhere in between? So first, let me say this, that I think that what you have to know, high schoolers, there is no pressure here. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. You're probably going to change your mind. You're looking at someone who has changed their minds a couple of times over. I went to college to be a doctor, ended up with a business degree, worked in corporate America, decided I did not want to do that, went into higher education. I thought it was amazing. I loved working in athletics, but I really wanted to become a physician. And so I went back to school and became a doctor. So I am living witness that you can do many things, but you got to have a plan to do those things. So when we're talking about career planning for you as a high schooler going into college that's going to eventually go on to do wonderful things, we really want you to be exploring, well, what do you like? I'm putting on my hat because as a life skills coordinator, back when it was called CHAMPS, I think it's just called life skills now for the NCAA, we talk to students to figure out, what are your thoughts? These days, you guys are pretty awesome because you do multiple things, right? You run Instagram pages that get you money. You run TikTok pages that get you money. You work traditional jobs and you participate in sports and you are a straight A student. Like, you juggle so many things, like, I think is outstanding. So it's a good time for someone like your counselor or even parents or friends to say, what are my passions? I want to know what those passions are, because should college be my next step, I want to be able to say, here are all the things I think that I like to do. And I'm going to go to all the different schools of whatever, whether that be School of Nursing, School of Business, School of Communication, School of Social Work. And I want to know what it takes to get there. So when you get to college, all these schools are going to have requirements for what you need to get into their school. I recommend that students go visit a bunch of them once you're on the campus to figure out, what your degree wants to be in. And listen, if you get that paper and the classes on there sound like stuff that you absolutely don't want to do, where I'm gonna let you in a secret early, then I would not recommend that you take, that as your major, because you're not passionate about it. But if you have passions and drive about things that that you want to do, that really helps you, help people around you figure out, well, how do we get you there? Is it fashion design? So be it. Is it broadcasting? Okay, great. But in order to express that, you got to do a little soul searching to figure out what that is. And for people who are not going to college, are you doing trade schools? Are you going to be an electrician? Are you going into construction? Are you running your own business? All those things are important to know, because as you're transitioning from high school and then into college, or from high school and then into the workforce, there are people that are standing by ready to help, but they can only help as much as your goals are. For college campuses, which is where I did most of my work, what you have to know is that where there's a career center or there's an academic study center if you are a student athlete, and they are designed to kind of help you navigate those things, whether it's learning how to write a resume, or it's learning how to put together a business plan, or just kind of figuring out what you think you might want to do. They're there and they're available. You can pick many things over, but what you cannot do is sit on the information, because if we don't know, we cannot help. And so that is what I used to tell my student athletes all the time. When I know, I will help, but if I don't know, I'm kind of guessing, and I'm just watching and waiting for you to step up and let me know what you would like to do. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to get to questions if you have them. But I think what I want students to know is that what an amazing accomplishment to be a student athlete in high school. I think that it's wonderful. I think it provides many opportunities. And I just want you to take the momentum of all the physical demands that you have every day, how you eat, how you perform, and transition that into something that makes you very happy, makes you satisfied, and converts into something that you feel proud of the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. And we will get some questions if you have any and go from there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. Great information. And yes, we do have questions. So
Okay.
thank you for hanging on there and let me get some of these questions in. Your presentation was very diverse. I mean, you hit a lot of important topics, from mental health, depression, eating, exercising, career. So
Yeah.
I'm going to just jump in here. One of the questions we have is, why the stigma? Why do you think there's a stigma about mental health or, owning up to having issues?
Oh, well, it's layered, right? And it's very complicated because everybody has a unique thought about what it means to be depressed. Like, is depression a true diagnosis? Is it an illness? Or is it something it's a fleeting thing, right? Especially when we're talking to our young people, we sometimes downgrade their emotions. Oh, they're just being hormonal. Oh, she just started her period. It's fine. And, we do these things to try to do it. And sometimes parents are trying to protect it because they think, I don't want them to be afraid of thinking it's a big thing. And so it gets confusing. Also, it's the medication. So people hear, oh my gosh, you have anxiety and you have to take medicines. They're manipulating your brain. And so sometimes it's a matter of education. And so getting people to understand that depression is a true diagnosis. It happens to people. People do not wake up and say, I think this is a great day to be depressed. I cannot wait to go down in there and get into it. It just happens to people. Or how we see it on movies or TV, right? Depression looks like sitting in a dark room and I never want to come out. And for a lot of people, they can't identify that because for our students, they go to school every day. They're studying, they're participating. I'm not depressed. I got up this morning, I ate, I just can't figure out why my focus is off. Or I just can't figure out why I'm over or under eating. I ate a big meal yesterday and I didn't eat anything for the next 2 days. I don't know why I can't remember what the coach just told me 2 minutes ago. Something is going on. Those are all symptoms of depression. So part of it is that we don't understand how to diagnose it as a layman. And we think that the medicines are going to do things that they're not. So the medicines really don't have any mind altering things. Honestly, that's what therapy is for, right? So I tell people all the time, like, the medicine is not going to alter how you move about the world. Therapy will, right? Because therapy is trying to say, all right, the next time this thing comes, we're going to try a different approach, right? That's behavior modification. That's mind altering. But not the medication. The medication is trying to keep the level stable so that you can have enough focus and enough clarity and enough fatigue, less fatigue so that you can pay attention to how you're deciding to reshape it. I think once those conversations happen, everybody gets very clear on, okay, all right, I feel better about this. Let's go ahead and let's do it.
Right. And you touched on something, and I say this all the time. Medicine and taking those prescriptions, and it's a temporary fix. And I think it alters, who you really are and what's really happening. So that's just, my lack of a doctor title to add to that, but I totally agree with that. Another question we have is, student asked, can depression have an effect on an injury or even a concussion?
Well, sure. Not, is it, oh, I'm laying here, my wound is not going to heal or my injury is not going to heal because I'm depressed? Well, no. But depression can manifest in so many different ways, right? If you are low energy, so you miss your physical therapy appointments all the time. Well, this injury is not going to heal the way it needs to, right? You are a type 1 diabetic and you're sad and you got, this injury. And so instead of having your normal, fresh whole foods every day, you've got some Cheetos stuffed under your pillow. And so you eat those when nobody's paying attention. And so your glucose is through the roof and everything is a little off and you're not sleeping well and all these things. That's going to change how you heal. So we do know that people who have a stable mood, who are not depressed, people who believe in higher powers, people who have good family support, good family structure, and have outlets to discuss those things tend to have better healing phases. But I don't know that it directly impacts the injury. Like, this thing is not getting well because I'm depressed. It's just that you can't do all the things that go into recovery because you're just not present enough.
Okay. And you also mentioned vaccines.
Yes.
Those of us, who went through our vaccinations as a baby and as a child, is there such thing as vaccinations expiring?
Oh, well, that gets into like medical school classes. So there are some that expire, right? We know that, right? You get a tetanus shot, you get a Tdap every 10 years, right? We get flu shots every year. We get, and then there's some shots that we get again later. So Can vaccines expire? Well, it depends on which one that is. Can some vaccines not take? Well, sometimes. So if any of you have been to any kind of professional school, I'm a physician. So when I went to medical school, I had to get something called titers, right? So I had titers proof that I was vaccinated from measles, mumps, rubella, and hepatitis B. So they can check my blood to see, like, do you have your antibodies in there for it? Mine were yes, but I've seen people even in my clinic, in my practice, that come back and like, where are my titers? Well, I don't know. I don't know what happened to your antibodies, but we got to redo it. So sometimes you have to redo them for some people. And so the answer is yes, it can in some cases. And some that we know you need to repeat, we do. And then there's some you get them one and done, and you're done.
Okay. And in 2021, is there a, I don't want to call it a cocktail, but is there a vaccine that adults that have not had a vaccination in 20, 30 years, what do you suggest they do?
Come see me. So come see your primary care doctor. So there's things that there are vaccines that are going to come up as we age. So it isn't like, oh, I've left high school now, I'm clear. There are more coming, right? And so there are vaccines that we give for people, you know, whether that be shingles in your 50s or when you become 65. There's the pneumococcal pneumonia vaccines that happen. So there's things that happen along the way that we're always checking for. If anybody's ever confused, I am not sure what I need or what I've had, just bring us what you have, right? Remember I told the teenagers, like, once you get out of high school, to save your list of all. I learned that the hard way. I could not find it. And they were saying, you're gonna have to go and get all those vaccines all over again. And I thought, I will not, absolutely not. So when I found it, I held on with it for dear life. Like, I have it somewhere right now. If people are not sure what vaccines they have or what vaccines they think they need to get, they can come in and see their primary care doctor. We will look to see, is there something that is important based on your age, or is there something important based on your conditions? And do we need to give you those? We can always get those done in our offices. And so that's no problem. So we can take all the guesswork out of it. Don't feel pressured. Don't feel very stressed about it. Just bring it in and we will answer the question.
Okay, you actually just answered the next question we had, was how do adults get a copy of their vaccine records? You mentioned that, like you just said, it's very important. So if someone is wanting to take your advice and is not necessarily fresh out of high school or college, but how would someone in South Carolina get a copy of their records for vaccinations?
So it depends on how adult you are. Okay. So, you know, young adults may still, their records may be in the DHEC website. So the Department of Health may have a collection of those things. Now, I'm not from South Carolina. I am a Chicago girl, born and raised. But, you know, the Department of Illinois, there's a Department of Health Illinois that keeps a record of those things. So I reported those, so they will have them. So now the departments of health collect them. But let's say you are old enough that you're like, I do not recall ever having them reported. We do the best we can, right? So you can also age out of some vaccines, right? So, you know, if someone came to me and they were 75 and they were saying, you know, I just don't remember what I had when I was 10. I think that's okay. I think we can, you know, we can make it up as we go. Like we'll do what's important for you right now and we'll figure it out. But then there's the group, the gray zone group is like that 25 to 35 group, right? They decided they are changing careers. They're going to go back. They're going to become a lawyer and they're looking for their records. They're going, where are these records? I think that they can try the Department of Health and see and start there, or they can call their high school, because the high schools do keep records of those shots for a period of time, not forever, but you can call your high school first to see, do they have a copy of your records? They'd be more than happy to give them to you if they do. And if they don't have them, then go to your Department of Health.
Okay. And especially with, you know, the climate we're living in now, I do think having any a record of your vaccinations, because, you know, you don't know what the future holds and with traveling and so forth. So, and it goes beyond COVID. So that's great advice, Dr. Jones. We have a student that has sent in, what do you suggest I do if I feel an anxiety attack coming on? Is there anything that someone can do?
So if you're having the anxiety attack, right now. I think the first step is to get out of the whatever is driving the anxiety, right? So you've got to kind of step out of that. Now, if there's someone there that you know, that you trust, that you can say, hey, I need some assistance here. I'm having a hard time. Because some people hyperventilate, so they feel, like they're breathing. And so sometimes they need, assistance in like controlling their breathing. But let's say you're there by yourself, you think, oh my goodness, I feel this panic attack going on. I need to do it. I have patients that are like that sometimes. So I tell them, can you find a restroom? Can you find someplace safe? Are you going to pass out? If you're going to pass out, do not go and close the door and pass out in there by yourself. But if you do not feel like you're going to lose consciousness or anything, then sometimes taking yourself out of that space, whether that be a classroom, maybe you're performing, maybe you're on the field. I just need to excuse myself. If you can get somewhere and do some deep breathing exercises, just enough to calm down so that you can make a plan, that is the first step. If these things happen to you all the time, come see your doctor. Panic attacks people who have panic attacks actually is not uncommon as people think they are. But if you find that they're disruptive, right? They interfere with work, with play, with school, with performance, then we need to talk about them because there are ways to treat them. We've got medications, if it comes to that, we've got talk therapy. If it comes to that, we've got combinations of all of the above, which are absolutely amazing. That would be my first step.
Okay. And with the anxiety, I think after what occurred at the Olympics with Simone Biles, with the twisties.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for, I guess, students and or coaches if that happens? If a student is experiencing something, and I don't mean just gymnastics. I'm just saying that's an example. The twisties. How do you think a student should relay that information to their coach?
So I mean, you tell it like it is, right? Coach, I don't feel as confident in what I'm doing at this very moment. I feel some nervousness. I feel some anxiousness. And coaches may have a lot of empathy, but they can't always fix everything. So as much as we love our coaches and we look to them for everything, sometimes they don't have the answer. So what the students have to know is that the coach may be looking for a resource for you, but ultimately we've got to get you somewhere. So, we don't have the whole story on Simone Biles, who's amazing, by the way. Like, I think she's awesome. I was a gymnast before until I became like 5'10", and they told me that, there's no 5'10" in gymnastics. I was very sad about it, but I went on to play basketball fine. She went someplace else and there was help. So they were trying to help her figure out, well, what can you do? And she figured out, like, the beam doesn't give me the twisties. Maybe I can compete on the beam, right? It was a very redeeming moment for her because she was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do anything? I can't do bars. I can't do floor. I can't do vault. Oh my God, I can do beam. There were people around that were figuring that out for her. So I think what people have to know is you do not have to figure it out yourself. Telling your coach is a good first step. If they can't, and let's say you're on a college campus, there's a mental health department on most college campuses, right? If you're in college athletics, they will find someone for you, right? There are resources. That is the great thing about being in college, that they will find your resource. And if no one can find anything, call your primary care doctor. We've got, we've got virtual visits now. So I see patients and they talk to me just like you all are talking to me now. So I have college students that have moved away, but still have questions or concerns. They make appointments. We talk through it. We try to figure out a plan. We put in referrals. Those referrals can be away from home. So we just start throwing the resources at it to figure out, what can we do about it? Transitioning to getting into athletics is challenging, right? And then getting into college athletics is challenging because all of us worked our weight in gold. We may have been amazing athletes. But when I stepped on the court as a Division I athlete at the University of Alabama, you suddenly became a very small fish in a big pond. When you're in high school, you're the big fish, right? Like, I'm the man. Like, this is amazing. Like, everybody knows my name. I'm in the newspaper. It's so wonderful. And then you get to a college and everybody was all state,
Right?
all area. Everybody dropped 20 and 10. And that can give you some palpitations, okay? Like, I think that it's normal. Now, some of us figure out how to work through it, whether we have counseling or not, but I do not think there's anything wrong with saying, I can't breathe through this. Somebody needs to help me. and make the people that are caring for you find you some help.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have a final question. One of our viewers is asking, what is the appropriate amount of sleep that a student athlete should get every night?
So I think the sleep debate goes on and on, right? So you can read 3 articles and they'll have it a little bit different. So, my goal is trying to give people at least 8 hours of rest at night. It's really hard for me to get my teenagers to sleep for 8 hours because they're not asleep. Y'all, the adults are asleep. Everybody else in the house is asleep. They are not. They are on the phones and they look up and the time has just gone past. So the goal that we set in my clinic is, can you try to get 8 hours? There's somewhere between 6 and 8. The 4 and 5 that they first report is just too low. They really need to get at least 8 hours because we want them to cycle through their REM cycles enough times so they heal, that they repair, that they lay memory. You got to test the next day and you're trying to take your test on 4 hours of sleep. It doesn't work. But if you get a good night's rest, you be surprised the answers that you remember the next day. So 8 hours is the goal.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Jones. What a interesting, informative presentation. I mean, I have a lot of notes and I'll probably get with you after through Mr. Brooks, but we appreciate your time and all of the information that you've shared with us. And hopefully we'll see you on the sidelines at some point this year at one of our events. And that goes for our other presenters as well. So we appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
And coming up now with some closing remarks is Mr. Jerome Singleton, the Commissioner of the South Carolina High School League.
Thank you, Tammy. What a great summit. A lot of outstanding information that was shared. And hopefully we learned something from it, or learned a little something, or discover something about ourselves. I know I did. We found those information to be, of course, informational, educational, but what really worked for us, if we find it to be transformational. Are we different now after having gone through this summit than we were before we came in? Do we look at things differently? Are we a different person? Are we going to share things differently? A lot of great information. We all are a big proponent of when we know better, we got to do better. And I think with the information that was shared, we definitely know better. Now our challenge is, are we going to try to do better? Had a great introduction by CEO O'Halley. Had a great conversation about the body being in tip-top shape by Dr. Jones. Had a great conversation or great sharing with us about concussion by Dr. Foster. Dietitian Anderson shared with us how to keep the body healthy. All of this great information. Let's take advantage of that. Let's not just use these 2 hours that was just shared with us and walk away with nothing different. I know you can. Big pillar for the South Carolina High School League is health and wellness. We want you to continue to work with us, continue to enjoy these summits that we have. It's a little different that we're doing it online. We'd rather do it in person to person, but situation dictates that we can't do that right now. But we appreciate everything that you're doing. Definitely appreciation for all the presenters and everybody that played a role in putting this on. Thank you and have a good day. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. And that wraps up our very first Health and Wellness Summit. But I want you to make sure you stay tuned to our social media platforms as well as our SCHSL.org website. We will be posting throughout the year, giving you updates because we have more summits coming this year. Up next, we will have a sportsmanship. That will be the first of its kind. We'll have a sportsmanship summit as well as our traditional leadership summit. And we're also continuing with our middle school summits. So we got lots of things coming down the pipeline this year. So we want to make sure that you have connected with us on all of our social media platforms. I would like to just stress that we indeed hope that we've improved and made changes to your life in the last 2 hours. I know it worked for me. I know there's some things that I've got to throw out at home and start working on. But all in all, we would like to also thank Prisma Health, our partners at Prisma Health, and the 3 professionals that joined us today with so much information. That information will be available on our website as well as the NFHSnetwork.com website. So if you have any questions, contact us here. Other than that, we hope that you learn things, that you go back, revisit the presentation, and keep supporting your South Carolina High School League. I'm Tammy Newman, Director of Communications, and I wish you would have a great day and a wonderful week. Thank you.